Today, we're joined by SJSU faculty, Dr. Sanchita Mukherjee, who's going to discuss how she expands our students' learning behind or beyond the classroom. Thanks for chatting with me today, Sanchita.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, I'm excited for our discussion today. Before we get into that, I was hoping you could introduce yourself to our viewers and just help them learn a little bit more about you and kind of your story and your background and how you got to where you are today. So, can you highlight some of the kind of the key formative moments for you that shaped who you are and led you to pursuing economics and then teaching at SJSU and with SJSU Online?
Of course, absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Sanchita Mukherjee, and a little bit about myself. I completed my PhD in international economics from University of California at Santa Cruz. My focus was macroeconomics and monetary policy analysis. And while working on my PhD degree, I spent a considerable amount of time at Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, learning about how monetary policy works in real world, and also International Monetary Fund, where I got to work with countries in Middle East and North Africa. So those were really eye-opening experiences for me, and I realized how important these aspects are of economics are. And after completing my grad school, after completing my PhD, I worked in the private sector for a while, with a focus again on macroeconomic policy analysis. My job was to monitor, Pan-Asian countries, look at their interactions with US and Europe, monitor their GDP growth, inflation, interest rates. And after that, after my private sector experience, I spent some time in the public sector as well. Um, and in the public sector also, my job was to monitor the regional economy, their growth. uh, you know uh, I did a lot of forecasting in terms of what the population growth would be, what the income growth would be, where the inflation is headed. So this kind of analysis. And it so basically, I my grad school kind of gave me the training, and the theoretical background of these topics, but my job experience kind of helped me understand how real life works, how real world works, right? And ever since I started teaching, I have always been I started my education. I've always been interested in teaching. I started to teach as a teaching assistant at UC Santa Cruz. And I loved teaching. I loved to spend time with the students in the classroom. And even when I was working full time, I kept teaching in the evenings. And so when the opportunity came for me to teach at San Jose State University, and especially I'm grateful to the Department of Economics because they let me teach the courses I really enjoy teaching, like macroeconomics and econometrics, data analysis. So it was, a significant moment for me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing a little bit about your background and kind of how you got to where you are. Yeah, it was really just interesting and great to hear about how, what started out as kind of this initial entry point into the further study of economics and getting your doctorate, led you on this journey to not only pursuing it in so many ways, right? Thinking about how you're able to then apply what you learned in terms of the theory and the research in a practical environment, in the public sector, in the private sector, looking at it, domestically, looking at it internationally. But then you kind of had this concurrent experience that was happening with, getting involved in teaching as a teaching assistant and then continuing that journey as well. And I imagine, maybe that wasn't something that was originally part of your plan, but it's just kind of fortuitous that it worked out that way. And of course, we're really grateful to have you as one of our faculty members to be able to bring a lot of that experience and expertise that you have, from your background academically and professionally into your teaching practices here at SJSU. And I think that's a good segue into our first topic. Given that you have this expertise and background in research and analysis of economic issues. I was wondering if you can just share some insights around the current macroeconomic situation that we've had in recent months.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Brian. I think this would be a great segue. I mean, I I feel like this is this is a really important and crucial time because if you think about what's going on, not only in the U.S. but in the world right now, the inflation is rising, the prices are going up. There's macroeconomic volatility in terms of the GDP growth is fluctuating. Um, and also the geopolitical conflicts, in terms of Ukraine war that is going on. And I think these three would be the top concerns this year: the inflation, macroeconomic volatility, and geopolitical conflict. Because uh, this is a time when the countries are now trying to, cushion themselves from the effect of COVID-19, because that led to a lot of supply chain issues, right? By restricting the supply chain, the most of the companies, they did not have enough resources available in terms of raw materials, which raised the prices up. So while the countries are working on that, now we have the Ukraine war, which is raising food prices, grain prices, energy prices, gas prices. So this is a very very tricky situation for most of the countries, most of the governments, and their central banks right now. If you have seen Fed chairman Jerome Powell's speech the other day, that he mentioned that how the Federal Reserve Bank is expecting the prices to go up, right? And that's why they are planning to increase the interest rates as well. Because when the prices go up, our if you think about working families, our purchasing power goes down. So $100 today is not worth as much as it was yesterday. So, as our purchasing power goes down, then we start to purchase less. Then the companies suffer from it because they are not selling as much. So they need less people to produce. That leads to layoffs. That increases unemployment. So the central bank's job is to keep a lead on this inflation, rising prices, so that they can maintain a stable economy. But at the same time, in order to reduce inflation, when you increase interest rates, that increases the cost of borrowing. And when the cost of borrowing goes up, we borrow less. And if you think about businesses, when they borrow less, they invest less, and that also reduces job growth. So it's a very complicated balance that we have to maintain. And to make working people better off, we need to keep the inflation down, but at the same time, we have to maintain the job growth as well. So I think that would be a very crucial aspect of government and federal policy this year. And I don't know if this morning I was reading about Silicon Valley Bank, how they're talking about a bank run, that how depositors are withdrawing their deposits from the banks. This also, because they expect the interest rates to rise. So we will see, this kind of pressures in regional banks, and mostly, the government and the Fed would have to step in to ensure people that everything is going to be fine. It's just we're trying to help the economy stabilize. But all this macroeconomic volatility, I think, would be an important aspect of what we are going to see this year.
Wow, thanks so much for providing, just that overview, but also the analysis and really highlighting how, I mean, just the connection between, the studying economics, right? There's all this theory and modeling that you can do, but there's really no shortage of thinking about what that looks like in everyday life and how all these things are interrelated, as you're talking about, and how they really impact the day-to-day lives of everyday people. So when we're thinking
Yeah,
about things like inflation and geopolitical conflict and supply and
yeah,
demand and supply chain and all those things, those things affect all of us each and every day. So So thank you for highlighting some of the things that have been happening, kind of recently in the world. And I think now next I'd like to turn to thinking about how that connects to your teaching and your courses. So you're teaching the course Intermediate Macroeconomics. And I was wondering if you can
Right.
provide just kind of a general overview of what that course consists of, and maybe share an example or two of how you create valuable learning experiences for your students in that course.
Absolutely. And this is a very important time and interesting time as well, because there's so many things like I described, rising prices, rising interest rates, bank run, all these things are going on. And we this is exactly what we are going to learn in our class in intermediate macro. So this summer I will be teaching Econ 102, intermediate macroeconomics, and it will, this course will help us understand the relationship between these macro variables, how inflation affects interest rate, how interest rates affect unemployment and GDP and income growth. Um, and this analysis will help us assess the current macroeconomic situation, not only in this country but also in the world. How government and also Federal Reserve Bank, how they come up with their economic policies. um, and we will talk about why people are unemployed, and what can the to give you some examples why people are unemployed. What can the government do, what should the government do about it? um, why are the prices rising, and why do prices go through inflationary and deflationary cycles, and what can the Federal Reserve Bank do about this? And these and there is no simple answer to these questions, right? So rather, what we are going to learn about is we are going to learn about a framework that will help us not only understand these questions but also evaluate or assess the policies that can help stabilize the situation, right? So that would be our goal. So and along with that, it's not just reading the book and learning the theory, but also it goes with hand in hand with collecting data. So that would be another important part of our course, that we will learn how where to find macroeconomic data. And believe it or not, as advanced technologically we are, most of the financial, like investment banks, the financial sector, they still use spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are still the most used tool in the market, and we will use spreadsheets extensively in order to learn how to collect data and how to analyze data in order to understand what's going on in the market, and how we can evaluate some of these policies to understand whether it's the right thing to do or not, or maybe in the short term it doesn't make much sense, but in the long term that will help us. So these are some of the things that we are going to discuss in this class, both theoretical and practical, and we will try to integrate this too.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you finished right where I was going to start and say that sounds, really just really practical and valuable to be able to have the tools and the terminology and the theory and the understanding to be able to kind of name what's happening in the world, why it's happening. But then you said to go a little bit deeper, right, and to be able to actually do research and analysis and evaluation of those things. Obviously, sounds really transferable for thinking about where people might want to take this degree once they're finished. And it just sounds really exciting, to really be able to take those things and really look at what's happening in our day-to-day lives, and be able to dig a little bit deeper and provide a lot more research and evaluation around it. So I guess that transitions us to our last question. Given that you have this extensive background of professional experience in the public and private sector while teaching, are there any other ways that you go about incorporating some of those professional experiences that you've had into your teaching practices in order to enable our students to apply their learning outside of the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And learning inside the classroom is very different. I know most of our students taking this course are probably working, right? Because that's why this online course help so much, that it gives them the flexibility. They can work. They don't have to keep their professional life on hold in order to complete their degree. So they can work at the same time, they can take the courses, they can spend time with the family, at the work, with their friends, any activities they like, and at the same time take these courses and complete their degree. So, that's why the SGSU online program is so great. Uh, and But at the same time we have to understand that uh, you know when we're in the classroom, or even when taking the course, it's more controlled. You have the syllabus, you have the textbook, okay, so these are the chapters that I'm going to read, and the questions will be based on these chapters. So it's more controlled. But while you're working in the real world, you're working on a job, um, the questions most of the time you have to resolve are, you know uh, you don't know about them much, right? You may have a vague idea, but still, there's so much uncertainty going on in the world right now. You don't know, for example, if you're forecasting, you don't know tomorrow whether we are going to hit by a recession or not. So there is just so much uncertainty. And um, so what we are going to do is use this controlled classroom environment in order, to prepare us for that uncertainty, how to answer those questions when they come up. Uh, and the way, what I have learned from my past experiences, and what I'm planning to follow when I teach this class, is that um, this uh, this merge of this, the classroom experience with the outside experience, it requires learning outside the classroom. It's not just what just reading the textbook. That's a very important part, because that's how we are going to learn theory. But along with it, we have to look at the data. We have to we have to be able to come up with some of the most challenging questions by ourselves. That, what do we think is the most important challenge that these countries will be facing next year? This is just an example I'm giving you. What is the most important challenge these countries will be facing, and how to convert this into an economic question, and then how to collect data in order to answer this question, right? And write up our own analysis. So this will help us integrate the theory that we are learning in class, and practice to develop skills that will help us to answer questions. And then in the future, when they're in the job market or when they're working, they can integrate this learning experience with in the job market. And that is what I think we will try to do in this course together, me, and also along with the students. That's my goal.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that distinction you made between the classroom environment being kind of this more controlled environment, and then thinking about beyond the classroom being a space where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of things that are kind of beyond our control, but using that classroom as an opportunity to really think about developing the reasoning, the critical thinking skills, the communication, the creativity, being able to use the tools that you have at your disposal, so that when you're in those kind of uncertain environments, you're able to apply those skills and experiences in those environments to the best of your ability. So
Absolutely.
awesome. That sounds really exciting. Well, thanks so much, Sanchita, for sharing your insights with us and talking about the value of your course, the economics program, SJSU Online. Thank you to our viewers, as always, for watching. Please comment on this video if you have any questions or comments. Feel free to subscribe if you want more content. Visit our website, sjsu.edu online, to learn more about our programs and get in contact with our enrollment counseling team. And we'll catch you in the next live stream. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.